Good evening, Australia. Welcome along to New York City. We are broadcasting from the Big Apple ahead of UFC 322 this Sunday, where our very own Jack Della Maddalena takes on Islam Makhachev, and it's a pleasure right now to be joined by the voice of the UFC, Jon Anik, and an obvious first question for me, mate, the 4-20 beanie.
You guys did not bring this for me. I brought this myself.
That's right. You certainly
and there's
did.
A little chill in the air. It is sightly, to say the least. We're in New York City. We're excited to be here, and yeah, I guess this was the right hat to bring today.
What I would give for a meat pie right now.
I'm telling you.
Oh, mate. Yeah, but the theme of today's show, John, is if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And there is a magic about New York City. No matter how many times I come back, it never wavers. There's an optimism, there's a buzz, there's a sense of opportunity. Am I crazy?
The energy in the air is palpable every time you come here. And I'm a Bostonian, and if you don't know, this is our rival city when it comes to professional sports, right? So no love lost in a lot of respects, but even for me, I can acknowledge what New York City represents, not just to the United States of America, but to the world and to combat sports, right? This is the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. So needless to say, we're excited to be here. We're braving the cold. We get to be here. We don't have to be here, and we're excited.
That's right. And you did mention that it's absolutely right when it comes to combat sports, especially. This city and Madison Square Garden has become somewhat of a hallowed ground for so many fighters, right? Las Vegas is often described as the fight capital of the world, but so many glorious moments, John, have taken place right here.
Well, with respect to Perth, WA, where it has been the hottest ticket in UFC history at times, right? Of course, when we think about Volkanovski and Makhachev, annually the hottest ticket in town is when the UFC comes to Madison Square Garden. I get more requests that I cannot answer for tickets than ever before when it comes to this arena. And it doesn't matter oftentimes who is competing. The magnitude of this live event is never lost on the UFC. As such, they stack the deck, and what an opportunity in front of these four athletes. You know, we have UFC history this weekend, right? Never before in the illustrious history of the UFC have we had two athletes, former champions or current champions in a division, challenging to become double champs on the same evening. It has never happened before, and the pay-per-view open writes itself. So to have an MSG NYC backdrop is pretty special, needless to say.
Well, the Mecca, it's housed, you know, Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. It's housed, you know, Sugar Ray Robinson, and you know, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, as a fighter, what would that do in your opinion? Like, when you headline Madison Square Garden and you emerge victorious on the night, what in your opinion does that do for your legacy?
So there are three things as a combat sports athlete, mixed martial arts as far as I'm concerned. Making the UFC walk, right? That's the walk every athlete hopes to do. Ideally it happens not at the UFC Apex, but at MSG or in Perth, WA, you know, and then to make a walk at Madison Square Garden, or the world's most famous arena, as they call it, is just unique unto itself, you know, and a lot of these athletes are going to have that opportunity this weekend, and they'll try to maximize that showcase, and they'll try to check that and compartmentalize that in the proper place and make sure they channel the emotions and the energy in the right way. There's a lot of pressure that comes to fighting in this arena, and even people who don't have a long history with the United States or even with combat sports, this energy and this atmosphere just sort of builds like an avalanche upon the athlete all week, and then you hope just Saturday night that you can exhale in all the right ways. I'm excited.
Well, it's funny because you think of all the flashy, flamboyant characters that have graced the halls of Madison Square Garden. We mentioned Muhammad Ali, Conor McGregor probably more recently. Neither Jack Della Maddalena nor Islam Makhachev probably fits that ostentatious mold, do they? But they similarly have a chance to etch their names in history this Sunday, don't they?
Well, and all you need to do is see Jack Della Maddalena get in a fighting stance, and you know, he becomes a Madison Square Garden favorite. But what a remarkable career it's been for both of those gentlemen, right? It's interesting how fights come together, right? Because Islam Makhachev very easily could have been fighting Ilia Topuria and staying at 155 pounds. And I think for Jack Della Maddalena and for his team and Ben Vickers, you lean all the way into fighting the otherworldly Islam Makhachev, even though he is a man, in theory, smaller coming up. What an incredible run it's been for Jack, right? Three-name Jack, as we like to call him on the Anik and Florian podcast, loses his first two pro fights in a 10-week span in 2016, and the man has won 18 straight fights since, and somehow he's a north of 2-1, if not 3-1 underdog in some spots in advance of UFC 322. It's absolutely fascinating. You know, ultimate competitor comes to mind when I think about Jack, and I think his scrambling ability is going to be tested to the nth degree by Islam Makhachev. It's a fascinating fight. It's worthy of the Madison Square Garden backdrop, right? It's a mega fight. It's a super fight, and we'll see who's the better champion on Saturday night, and thankfully the fight's indoors for you and me.
Absolutely, yeah. We won't keep you outdoors for much longer, but Islam Makhachev, right, you speak of legends, and he's already a standing legend as it is, John.
Yeah.
But what is it about him that makes it so special, and where do you think and how significant do you think this legacy-defining moment is for him?
Islam Makhachev is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world on my list that, relatively speaking, means nothing, right? But it's crazy to think about a scenario here in 2025 in which Islam Makhachev is not a world champion. He didn't lose his belt in the octagon, and it seems like he was sort of forced this way because of the emergence of Ilia Topuria, right? So it's not out of the realm possibility that he goes back to 155 pounds, but the ability to check this box as a double champion, simultaneous or otherwise, is something that has long been a desire of Islam Makhachev. You know, some guys like Alexandre and Pantoja and Merab Dvalishvili, they want to be the greatest flyweight or bantamweight champion of all time. Islam Makhachev has long desired to be a double champion, something that maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov didn't realize. So it's all in front of Islam. I'm fascinated by the betting line, if you can't tell. I don't understand why it's so demonstrably wide. But Islam deserves his flowers. You know, as far as I'm concerned, you don't lose your pound-for-pound #1 status outside of the octagon. So for me, he's still the king until proven otherwise.
Tactically, John, are these the fights that you enjoy calling the most? I mean, I know this fight can simply be dismissed as a striker versus grappler. I think it's probably a bit more nuanced than that. But, I mean, are you most fascinated when both guys have sort of a clear path to victory and very well-defined specialties?
Jack can do it all, and I think so can Islam. I mean, I think you can lean into sort of any angle and, you know, look into specialties and all of those things, you know. But when we were sitting down with Jack Della Maddalena in our fighter meeting before he fought Ramazan Ameev, he said, you know, I'm excited to have this Dagestani wrestler test at this point in time, right? And he has since passed other tests like Gilbert Durinho Burns and Bilal Muhammad. I would submit to you that Islam Makhachev is none of those things. He's not Ramazan Ameev, he's not Gilbert Burns, he's not Bilal Muhammad, he's everything and then some. And that's what makes this fight so fascinating, because I do think Jack Della Maddalena is the better athlete. He's just an outstanding athlete. Like in a street fight, best of luck. I mean, just the way he scrambles. I could just see Jack Della Maddalena in a street fight, like scrambling out of his shirt, like his shirt comes off and he knocks you and your brother and his sister clean out because he thought it was a guy or something, you know? So I believe in Jack, but I believe his ability in transition and his grappling ability in theory figures to be tested like never before. But on the feet, as much as we want to, you know, put accolades at the feet of Islam Makhachev, I don't think any of these guys at 170 pounds want to, you know, hang around on the feet too long with Jack. I really don't.
And just lastly, John, you touched on it a little earlier. When you look at not only the strength of the main event, but also the firepower across the entire card. I mean, Zhang Weili is trying to do something very similar in the co-main event. Could UFC 322 be the biggest UFC event at Madison Square Garden?
Absolutely. So just because it's Madison Square Garden and it's New York City doesn't necessarily mean it's the best fight card of the year on paper, but that is our reality at UFC 322. I mentioned the UFC history. You know, I was starting to write my pay-per-view open on Jack Della Maddalena, and then I started thinking, well, we have these two fights. Has this ever happened before? It hasn't. Kind of got to write things that way. But moving night in the welterweight division, right? The fact that you're getting Carlos Prates and Leon Edwards, not even a feature bout on pay-per-view, fourth fight from the top. We are absolutely loaded, and yeah, excited to bring it to you. On pay-per-view, we can still say a couple more times, but yeah, 2 more numbered cards the rest of the way, and none bigger than UFC 322.
We certainly can, and pay-per-view remains live and exclusive right here on Main Event. Jon Anik, can't wait for it. Thanks so much for your time on Fox.
My pleasure always.